I slowly hung up the phone and went to the next person on the list. Hello, everyone, and welcome to That Deacon on YouTube. If you remember, in the last episode talking about the diaconal ordination process, the story ended with me sending an email sharing my thoughts about what I called stirrings. So this video will cover the time spent with my rector and the next steps involved in what is called personal discernment. Before I share anything, it's time for my disclaimer. Each diocese has their own methods following the national church's canons regarding the ordination of clergy. The canons are broad enough to allow local derivations, while at the same time following the Episcopal Church's canons regarding the ordination process. If I quote from a document, I'll be using the discernment process document written by the Episcopal Diocese of Los Angeles. I honestly don't remember what I talked about at my first discernment meeting with my rector, but the main subject of our talk was probably sharing what led up to me sending the email to my rector in the first place. I do remember stating that I strongly felt called to the diaconate. My rector's reaction was positive, but he admitted that he knew little about the restoration of the order and how this process differed with regard to discernment and the parish's process of identifying a call towards diaconal ordained ministry. I'm sure at the end of my appointment, he probably went online to brush up on the revival of what is called and what was called the vocational diaconate. It's a term I find silly to this day, but that's a theme for another video. He suggested we continue to meet once a month to explore my call to ordained ministry so that he could mentor me through this process of discovery. Because the next step involved the parish, he said that it would be better to keep this portion of my discernment quiet. Now, I guess it's time to discuss the great no, which can happen at any point in the discernment process. As I mentioned in my first video, the ordination process is messy and filled with many steps. And at any time, a person in authority could suggest that they did not see or view my call towards ordination as valid or recognized. Since I felt my entire being was being called to the diaconate, I entered the process with open, honest innocence. This turned out to be a good thing. In the next months, and in its own way, we followed the recommendations found in our discernment document, which says, the initial discussion in part should review the person's spiritual life. Does the clergy leader see evidence of a discipline of prayer, regular attendance at public worship, a commitment to the ongoing life and mission of the Church. Is the interested person willing to meet with a spiritual guide or director? One of my first assignments was to find a spiritual director. After a few weeks of searching, and after a few tentative steps, I made a list of names to call. Since I had never thought about a spiritual director and had no concept of what to expect or what to say, I just slowly started to dial the phone and contact names. I was really unsure what to even ask for. Well, one of my early calls, I didn't have to worry about what to say. I called one spiritual director and was forwarded to an answer machine, which had no words, no voice, and no identification. But I did hear this. Yep, bird song. I slowly hung up the phone and went to the next person on the list. And voila! I found Vern Woodleaf, an experienced deacon in our diocese who was also a trained and certified spiritual director. I was so lucky. And Vern walked beside me during most of my early path. During my long process, she moved out of state, but came back to Southern California to serve as one of the deacons at my ordination. Don't forget, if you find these videos helpful and interesting, consider subscribing to the channel. If you click the bell icon, you'll be notified when new content is available. And also, think about subscribing to my secondary channel named The Flow, which releases a weekly video helping others embrace contemplative spiritualities. During the subsequent months, my meetings with the rector included these subjects. This initial exploration between clergy and the individual pursuing discernment would include discussion of the faith community's role in identification of a call, exploration of leadership options within the congregation, reflection upon and discernment of God's action in one's life, a rule of life, personal prayer, study, worship, service to others, an Anglican understanding of the sacraments and Scripture. My personal ministry within the parish took on a different focus. I was asked to find ways in which I might take a more expanded leadership role. So here's a brief summary of how this was made known. Our parish had participated in AIDS Walk for a few years, headed by our GLBTQ ministry. I had noticed that at the venue, there was a small contingent of various booths offering support and other information. I suggested that our ministry rent a booth at the AIDS Walk Festival, which we named Reclaim Your Faith. It turned out that we were the first faith-based community to make their presence known. I was also able to arrange a pre-AIDS walk Eucharist as well. So people participating will get together, and anyone at the festival could join us. During this time, I trained to become a small group leader. Now, this really helped me walk deeper into an understanding of Scripture, especially as I would have to study the readings covered for each section. This group met every 2 weeks, which included dinner for about 6 to 8 people. I had a wonderful group of people within the church and a few from outside the parish. Out of this group came our field trips to art museums to compare Scripture and the artist's interpretation, which was named The Artist and the Word. You can find out more about this as I've shared a video on this highly successful program and trips to art museums all over Southern California. In keeping with the diaconal ministry, I was assigned to the rota to lead the prayers of the people. One summer, I offered Compline at the beach. The parish was, after all, and is in Huntington Beach, so why not gather on Sunday evenings and use one of the public fire pits? So as the sun went down, we sat around the fire praying Compline with the sand, the sea, and the waves. Lastly, during this time, I came up with the idea for our GLBTQ ministry to also present the very first National Coming Out Day service. Our first offering was held in the chapel. It was successful enough to develop further, eventually after I was ordained, to become a yearly event for the entire diocese. And over the next 10 years, we presented this service at a church out in Long Beach. As busy as I was in various aspects of parish life, it was not difficult to ask people to get involved. And there were many helping hands. And I was very fortunate to have the support not only of clergy, but of parishioners as well. The important thing to remember is that as things progressed, I'm sure my rector was interested to see if I could dream up an idea, present the idea, and get support from members of the parish, as this should be a fair barometer of leadership abilities. Then there came the day when my rector informed me that it was time to put together an official discernment committee. In the next video, I'll share what happened next, forming a discernment committee and meeting with them as I continue this series covering the diaconal ordination process. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you find these videos helpful and informative. Take care, God bless, and see you next month.